She stood there frozen, spotlights blazing, cameras flashing, 100 elite guests staring in silence. The billionaire on stage was on one knee, holding a diamond ring the size of her paycheck for the entire year. "Just for 2 minutes," he whispered, his voice trembling but somehow steady enough to echo through the grand hall. "For just 2 minutes. Be my wife," the room gasped. Some laughed, thinking it was a publicity stunt. Others reached for their phones, ready to record the scene that was about to go viral. Grace Miller didn't move. Her hands still clutched the serving tray, the champagne glasses trembling just enough to betray her nerves. She was a waitress, not a guest, not someone used to the smell of designer perfume and expensive secrets. And yet, tonight every eye in that room was on her. Across from her, Ethan Cole, billionaire hotel magnate, the kind of man who owned the chandelier above her head, looked desperate, not arrogant. There was no smirk, no game, just a flicker of something that looked a lot like fear. Grace had no idea why a man like him would beg her for something like that. But everyone else already had their story. "She must have planned this," one whispered. "A gold digger's dream come true," another laughed. She wanted to disappear. But somewhere between the laughter and the flashing lights, she realized, this moment would define her, whether she liked it or not. And as she looked down at that diamond ring, her life, the long shifts, the broken dreams, the promises that never lasted, flashed before her eyes. The cameras caught her trembling lip. What they didn't catch was the story behind it, because this wasn't the moment Grace fell apart. This was the moment the universe whispered, "Your time has come." You want to know how a tired waitress ended up on stage beside a billionaire? How a woman who stopped believing in fairy tales got asked to play one on live television? Let's rewind. Before the flashing lights, before the champagne, before the ring. Back to the night everything changed. Long before Ethan Cole ever said, "For just 2 minutes, be my wife." Welcome, story lovers. From where are you watching? Drop your city name in the comments. Let's see how far our story travels. Grace Miller wasn't born poor. She became poor, one heartbreak at a time. She grew up in a small town outside Denver, in a 2-bedroom house her father built with his own hands. He was a mechanic. Her mother, a school secretary. They didn't have much, but they believed in decency, hard work, and the power of small dreams. Grace believed in them too. As a kid, she used to stand by her window at night, staring at the city lights far away and whispering, "Someday, I'll be there." She didn't want riches or fame, just a life where she could wear clean clothes, pay her bills, and help her parents retire early. She worked for it. Top of her high school class, community college scholarship, studied hospitality management because she wanted to make people feel special. That was her thing, making others feel seen, but life doesn't give extra points for kindness. Her senior year, her father fell sick, lung complications from decades at the auto shop. The medical bills came faster than her scholarship checks. Grace dropped out to help her mother. She told herself she'd go back. Just 1 semester off. That semester turned into 10 years. She waited tables at roadside diners, then at airports, and finally at the fancy downtown restaurant where the rich came to forget how the rest of the world lived. Grace had learned how to smile while swallowing pride. She became fluent in invisible pain, the kind you hide behind polite laughter. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, even of people who never remembered hers. The kind who left thank-you notes for managers who underpaid her. The kind who still believed that doing the right thing meant something, even when no one noticed. But one man did notice. Derek Hayes, a smooth-talking real estate agent who made her feel like the world finally saw her. He called her his lucky charm and promised a future full of us. She believed him, because hope is stubborn like that. They married in a courthouse, exchanged paper rings, and moved into a small apartment with peeling wallpaper and a shared dream of someday. Someday, they'd buy a house. Someday, they'd open a cafe. Someday, life would finally be fair. Then came the recession. He lost his job first, then his temper, then his faith. Grace picked up double shifts to keep the lights on. Derek picked up bad habits to numb his failures. The bills piled up. The fights got louder, until one night he simply walked out, left a note, his wedding band, and a rent notice 2 days late. That's the night something in Grace broke, but quietly. Like glass under a pillow. For weeks, she pretended everything was fine. Told her landlord, he's traveling for work. Told her mother, we're figuring things out. But deep down, she knew no one was coming to save her, so she saved herself. She sold her car. Took 3 bus routes to reach work, ate oatmeal for dinner, and when her uniform tore, she stitched it up by hand because new ones weren't in the budget. She became known at the restaurant as the girl who never complains. Managers loved her reliability. Coworkers admired her silence. But nobody knew that after every late shift, she walked home through the dark, rehearsing old dreams like bedtime stories. Maybe next year I'll finish my degree. Maybe someday I'll have my own event planning business. Maybe. Hope became her nightly prayer. Then, one morning, while scrolling job ads, she saw a position at the Cole Regency Hotel, one of the most prestigious names in the city. They needed waitstaff for a charity gala, one night only. High pay, fancy event, and a chance to work in a place where people wore diamonds instead of doubt. Grace applied, instantly. That single application became a turning point she didn't see coming. She ironed her thrift store dress shirt, borrowed shoes from a friend, and told herself, just smile and serve. That's all she had to do. Serve, smile, and go home. But life had other plans, because that night, the night she was supposed to be invisible, she walked straight into a storm of money, power, and secrets. She would meet the man everyone admired and envied. The man who would shatter her quiet existence with one impossible request. But before that moment, before the lights and cameras and ring, Grace lived a life most people scroll past. A life built on survival, stitched together with dignity. She had learned that not every hero wears armor. Some just wear name tags and forced smiles. Grace Miller's story wasn't about glamour, it was about grace itself. The kind that keeps you standing when everything else falls apart. The kind that turns ordinary women into legends no one saw coming. Grace Miller's story could have stayed. Ordinary. Another quiet life of small tips and big sacrifices, if not for one night that refused to be ordinary. The Cole Regency Hotel was glowing like a crystal palace when she arrived. Limos lined the entrance. Champagne flowed like rivers of gold. And Grace, wearing her best borrowed shoes, was part of the invisible army that made it all sparkle. Remember, her supervisor barked. Smile, no photos, no talking to guests, and for heaven's sake, don't spill anything. Grace nodded, clutching her tray. She'd done dozens of events before, but this one felt different. The air was heavy with importance. The gala was a fundraiser for the Children's Hope Foundation, hosted by the hotel's billionaire owner, Ethan Cole. She'd seen him on TV 100 times. Tall, perfectly pressed suits, that confident half-smile that said, I never lose. But up close, there was something different, something strained. His smile looked practiced. His eyes, haunted. Grace didn't notice it right away, though. She was too busy dodging elbows and balancing glasses while wealthy guests whispered about mergers and art auctions. Everything about the night screamed money. The flowers were imported from France. The dessert alone probably cost more than her monthly rent. She just wanted to finish her shift, collect her pay, and maybe treat herself to a proper dinner for once. But fate has a way of testing people who think small. Halfway through the evening, she heard shouting near the back hallway. Her instincts told her to stay away, but her conscience said otherwise. She peeked around the corner. 2 men in suits were arguing, one of them clutching a clipboard. I told you the press release needs to go out before the speech. The first hissed. The deal's not ready, the other snapped back. If the merger collapses now, Cole's reputation goes with it. Grace froze. She didn't understand everything, but she caught 2 words that made her ears ring: fabricated donations. She slipped back quietly, heart pounding. Was she hearing what she thought she was hearing? A few minutes later, she saw Ethan Cole walking toward that same hallway, tense, shoulders tight. He looked like a man walking into a storm, and for a second, just a second, their eyes met. It was one of those strange moments when two lives collide without meaning to. She looked away quickly, embarrassed. But the way he looked back at her wasn't with arrogance. It was as if he recognized something. Someone. Familiar. Later that evening, while clearing tables near the stage, Grace overheard another conversation, this one between two socialites dripping in diamonds. "Poor Ethan," one whispered. "His fiancée's family backed out of the merger at the last minute. Tonight's supposed to save face." "Save face." The other laughed. "He's about to lose a $50 million deal and a future senator's daughter in one night. The man's crumbling." Grace blinked. So the perfect billionaire had cracks after all, but she didn't have time to think about it. Her manager waved frantically from across the room. "Table 7 needs champagne, move it!" As she turned, disaster struck. A guest stumbled backward, bumping into her tray, champagne spilling straight across the marble floor and onto a pair of polished Italian shoes. The shoes belonged to Ethan Cole. Time stopped. Gasps rippled through the hall. The music quieted. Grace's stomach dropped as she looked up and saw his face, expression unreadable, eyes fixed on hers. Her manager's voice sliced through the silence. "Grace." "What on earth? Apologize! Now!" She did, instinctively. "Sir, I'm so sorry. It was an accident. But Ethan didn't speak. He just stood there, calm but distant. The room buzzed with murmurs. Cameras turned. It was humiliation at its finest, an ordinary woman drowning in the eyes of the elite. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of anger, Ethan stepped closer and smiled. Not his fake CEO smile, a real one. He whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "It's fine." "You're fine." And then, with the crowd still watching, he turned to the nearest camera crew and said, "Actually, I think we should make this official." Grace frowned. "Official? What did that even mean?" Before she could blink, Ethan took her hand and led her toward the stage. His grip was firm, almost shaking. The guests began whispering louder now. Phones out, lights flashing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan began, his voice echoing through the hall, "you came here tonight to celebrate hope, charity, and partnership. And in that spirit," he turned to Grace, eyes trembling with something she couldn't name, "I'd like to make an announcement." The crowd leaned in. Grace tried to pull her hand back, whispering, "Please, don't." But he didn't let go. He smiled again, softly this time, and said into the microphone, "For just 2 minutes." "Be my wife," laughter broke out. The audience thought it was a joke, a PR stunt to distract from rumors. Even Grace thought she'd misheard, but then she saw his eyes, desperate, human, pleading. Something inside her told her this wasn't about headlines or saving face. It was something deeper. "Something painful." 2 minutes, he said again. "Lower now." "That's all I need." Her tray clattered to the floor. The cameras flashed, and just like that, Grace Miller, the invisible waitress, was suddenly the center of the richest room in America. She didn't understand it yet, but this moment wasn't random. This was the universe cashing in every quiet act of kindness she'd ever given. This was the night her fate collided with his secret, a secret big enough to destroy an empire, or save a man's soul. The ballroom was filled with the scent of lilies, champagne, and money. Cameras flashed as guests in glittering gowns turned toward the grand staircase. There he was, Ethan Crawford, the billionaire everyone in Manhattan whispered about. But tonight, his perfect composure was gone. His jaw tightened, his eyes darted toward the woman standing at the entrance. Lena, the fake wife he'd begged to play along for 2 minutes that fateful day. Only now, 2 months later, the entire city would see what those 2 minutes had started. "Mrs. Crawford," the reporter called out, her voice slicing through the crowd. "Rumor says your marriage isn't real. Care to comment?" Lena froze. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She hadn't planned for this. Ethan was supposed to tell the truth, to protect her from this humiliation. But instead, he stood silent, his expression unreadable. The crowd began to whisper. She was just a waitress, wasn't she? A hired act? Unbelievable. Even for him, her cheeks burned. Cameras zoomed in. Her face, her trembling hands, her pain now public. But when Ethan finally stepped forward, what he said shattered everything. It's true, he said quietly, his voice echoing through the hall. The marriage began as a deal. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lena's breath caught. He'd exposed her just like that. No explanation, no defense. Just betrayal. The same man who'd begged her to help him now stood watching her drown in whispers. She turned to leave, her eyes wet, her dignity hanging by a thread, when Ethan suddenly raised his hand. But that was before, he said. The room stilled again. Before I realized the mistake wasn't the lie, it was thinking love could ever be faked. Every camera light flickered back on her face. His words hung heavy, trembling in the air. Ethan stepped closer, his voice breaking. A rare crack in the billionaire's armor. She didn't marry me for money or power, he continued. She saved me. From myself, from the emptiness I called success. Those 2 minutes changed everything, because for the first time I saw what real love looked like. Lena's lips parted, her anger melting into shock. Tears welled in her eyes. This wasn't a speech for the cameras. His voice shook too much for that. This was raw, real. The same crowd that had sneered now looked breathless, caught between shame and awe. But then came the real explosion. From the back of the room, Ethan's fiancée, his real fiancée, the one he was supposed to marry before all this, stepped forward. Face flushed with fury. So this is your truth? She spat. You throw away our engagement, your empire, for her? Ethan didn't blink. For her, he said, steady and firm. Because she never wanted any of it, and that's exactly why she deserves everything. The room erupted in chaos. Security moved, reporters surged, and the PR team scrambled to cut the live feed. But it was too late. The story had gone viral, a billionaire choosing a waitress over an heiress live on national TV. Lena stood frozen. In one night, she'd gone from invisible to infamous, and yet, as Ethan turned toward her, eyes glistening, she realized something far more terrifying than the cameras or gossip. He wasn't acting anymore. This wasn't a show. This was his heart, raw, exposed, and breaking in front of the entire world. Dear viewers, if this moment hit your heart, give the video a like. It really helps more people find stories that feel real. The morning after the scandal felt like silence after a hurricane. Lena woke to her phone buzzing nonstop. Hundreds of messages, headlines, and requests. Her face was everywhere. The waitress who made the billionaire fall in love. But behind every headline was something deeper. The truth she had never wanted exposed. That she was just a woman trying to survive. And somehow, she'd become a symbol of love that money couldn't buy. For days, she stayed quiet. She didn't take interviews. Didn't answer Ethan's calls. She went back to the little apartment where it had all begun, the one bedroom with cracked tiles and a leaky ceiling. But this time it didn't feel like failure. It felt like clarity, because for the first time in her life, she didn't owe anyone a performance. Ethan, meanwhile, had vanished from the tabloids. Rumors swirled, that his company board wanted him out, that his investors had panicked. But when Lena opened her door one rainy afternoon, there he was, soaked, quiet, holding a small envelope. I'm not here to fix the past, he said softly. Just to say thank you. Inside the envelope was a check. Not millions, not a gesture of guilt. Just enough to cover her dream, a small bakery she'd once mentioned on that first day they met. On the back, he'd written, "For the woman who taught me what real love costs, and what it's worth." She didn't take it right away. She stood in the doorway watching him, the man who once commanded empires now standing humbly in the rain, waiting for forgiveness he might never get. And maybe that's what love really was, not fairy tales. Not perfection, but showing up when it hurts, even when the cameras are gone. Months passed. The headlines faded. But on a quiet street in Brooklyn, a new bakery opened, 2 Minutes Cafe. Its logo, A clock frozen at 12:02, because sometimes that's all it takes. 2 minutes to change a life forever. Lena ran the place with warmth that drew people in. Construction workers, teachers, even young women chasing dreams they thought were too small. She never mentioned her past, but every once in a while someone would recognize her. They'd whisper, "Aren't you?" She'd just smile. "I used to be," she'd say. "Now I'm home, and Ethan?" He kept his word. He rebuilt his company, slower this time, with honesty and humility. No more pretending. No more image. He even started a foundation in Lena's name, helping single women start their own businesses. No strings attached. They didn't reunite right away. They met once, years later, by chance, at a charity event she catered. No cameras, no reporters, just two people who had once shared a storm. He walked in quietly, placed a white rose on the counter, and said, "You made the world a little kinder, Lena." She smiled, eyes soft but steady. "You learned how to live, Ethan. That's enough," he nodded. And this time, he didn't try to hold her back, because some love stories don't need forever. They just need truth. Now, every evening, Lena closes her bakery at sunset, watching people laugh and linger over coffee. She wipes down the counter, turns the sign to closed, and smiles to herself. Because somewhere deep down, she knows. Those 2 minutes didn't just change Ethan's life. They gave hers a beginning she never saw coming. Dear viewers, if Lena's story touched your heart, hit the like button, share it, and remember, sometimes, even a moment you never planned can lead you exactly where you're meant to be. You'd subscribe for more powerful, emotional stories every week.